I am so far away from these issues, but they are so important to me that I'm not going to let the enemy go. You're a hypocrite. You don't buy into them. These are lies. And so you're like, no, I'm going to, until the day I'm complete in Christ and I'm home. I know I've been justified by faith. I'm being sanctified by faith. And one day I'll be glorified by faith. But until then, like, this is the play we're going to run.
Yeah. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of the Chasing Elephants podcast. And every once in a while, Pastor Jeff, Dr. Jeff Wallace, PhD, is not in the studio with me, and I get to bring somebody in. And today I get to bring in one of my absolute favorite people on the planet, bar none. I am gonna bromance brag on this guy several times. So before anybody shoots a comment about how this guy is on my what's the thing called, the not Mount Everest, where's the president's, Brian? What's the president's one? Rushmore. Yeah, he's on my Mount Rushmore, okay, of guys that have had a big influence on my life.
You have lowered your expectations.
None other
standards
than David Nasser. None other than David Nasser, man. So, anyway,
well, right back at you, man.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you.
So grateful for you and the way you've led. And my wife and I just 2 days ago were talking about some of your leadership skills and what a blessing you've been to our family. What a friend you've been to me. I always think back when I come to Orlando. I know this is like the city of fun, but I always think back at one time when I was speaking for you, or supposed to be speaking for you, at an event at Disney, and I went up the elevator. Elevator opened up. I was literally about to walk into this leadership event for you, and I looked at my phone, and it said that my brother Benji was about to pass away. And it just hit me like a wave of emotion. And I think I walked in the room, you walked over to say hi, and you could see it in my eyes, and you said, "Hey, what's wrong?" And I just started weeping. And I don't know if you remember this, man, but I said, "I think Benji's about to die."
Yeah.
And you go, "Let's go." You didn't tell anybody. You got in the elevator with me. You went down. You started driving me to the airport. You called your assistant, said, "Hey, let's figure out a way to get him the next ticket, whatever that is." And it was such a window into your character and ride or die, such a friendship. And I didn't want to lead in with that, but I'm just telling you, like, I just love you.
Thank you, buddy.
And honestly, the way you have honored your father through his sickness has been a real model for me. The way that you have been such a son in the ministry to Dr. J has been such a gift to me to watch and learn. And then the way you've been to my own kids.
Wow.
Both of them have been through all the tracks of SLU, 101, 201, 301, and they're better for it. And so grateful for you, man.
Man, you're so kind. You just blessed me. Well, I've looked up to you. I remember sitting at the very first youth conference I went to, and I wasn't really active in my student ministry. I was sadly a typical pastor's kid that was like, forget this, I don't want anything to do with this. And like, my dad took me to a Billy Graham crusade, and to show him that he was forcing me, but I didn't want to be there, I took a girl who I was hanging out with who had shaved her head, and she brought a bag of marijuana. And at a Billy Graham crusade, we sat in the hall, and you couldn't smoke it, but this is before edibles were edibles the way they are now. It was homemade edibles.
Oh my goodness.
And we literally sat in the hall and got high
at a Billy Graham
Billy Graham crusade, because I was not gonna. So I just rebelled against.
I learned this last night. You are a havoc guy. Last night we were at dinner, for those who are watching, and you point to Dr. Brown across at dinner, and you go, "Hey, I was supposed to get kicked out of college for just basically causing havoc."
Yes.
And Dr. Brown believed in me, pulled me in his office and said, "Everyone's telling me to let you go, but I just feel like grace today, and failure is not final." And now I'm sitting here, and you're telling me you went to a Billy Graham crusade and basically were taking weed gummies?
Yeah, you met me after I came to the Lord, as they say. But and so it was probably, I think I was out of high school even, and I'd come back, and my dad was like, "Please just go help, like go."
Yeah.
load the bags underneath the bus.
He just wanted you to be in the vicinity.
He just wanted to be in the vicinity. So
Yeah.
I finally went to a conference, Scott Dawson's
Yeah.
winter. It's over the winter time.
Yeah.
Not in the Panhandle, but up in the
Yeah.
Panama City of the mountains. What was that?
Gatlinburg.
Yeah.
The Panama City.
Well, if you got a beef jerky outlet on the way
That's
to
right.
the event, it's a
The
Panama
per
City.
capita mullet in that region is, I'd say, 8 to 9%
It
higher
has
than the
to
rest of
be.
Tennessee.
It has to be.
And I'm talking about the rest of Tennessee.
And people love it.
Yeah.
Like
Pretty much
love
everyone
it.
looks like Morgan Wallen. Even the women.
I mean, I know I saw a woman throwing a chair off a balcony, and so the first youth event I actually paid attention at and went to and went in the room, and you were preaching,
Man.
and I just was captivated by what you were doing. And then several years later, I got to meet you, and you came into my life. I just want everybody to know this. You came into my life at a time in which I was like, I want to do this, but I don't know what all this means. And I use the word evangelist, and I still do. But the only paradigm in my head for evangelist was, and I'm not trying to be rude here, guys, this is just how I grew up, was a really overweight guy that came to our town, yelled at everybody, and then left, and basically did the same thing in every town he went to, 30 years, 3 sermons. And, it was just, and I went, I don't want to do that. And then I started looking at history, and I went, oh, an evangelist is so much more than that.
Right.
And looking at the John Wesleys and anyways. And so I reached out to you. I reached out to a bunch of people, by the way. And you were the only one that called me back.
Yeah.
And you had me in your home, and you taught me how to do a school assembly back in the day when you could do school assemblies.
Yeah, man.
And off to the races we went. But,
hey. And let me just say, I think that is only or mainly because the same was afforded to me by older brothers and father figures in the ministry. One of them being your father-in-law.
Yeah.
When I was getting going, I think we're learning. I was learning last night at dinner. You're a havoc guy. I'm a bit of a havoc guy as well. Like, I'm gonna make trouble, whether it's for the kingdom or against the kingdom. You're gonna stir it up and go like, just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean we can't do it again.
Yeah.
We should try, or at least throw in the end zone for it. And I remember I was just such a different type of person than your typical youth group kid who just felt like there was a calling of ministry on their life. And I didn't even understand what calling looked like. I didn't grow up in church culture. And men like Jay Strack gave me access to their life. And so when you called and said, hey, I just would love to get together, to me, it was such a opportunity to give back.
Yeah.
But honestly, man, like, I look back at that day, and I probably learned more from you than I gave. You know what I'm saying? Like, I became the Timothy pretty quickly because guys like you are so exceptional, and you compel us. Like, you become a havoc guy. You're a havoc guy. You get in the ministry, and it pulls you. The suction of it pulls you to normality. And then you spend 2 hours with a young gun like you, and it reminds you to, like, hey, keep shaking it up, keep going for it. Be a disruptor.
Yeah.
And so it was more encouraging for me.
Well, you're
than,
kind to say that.
Than it,
Well,
hopefully,
this is going
for you.
to age both of us, but I know Grace just recently got married and is heading off to grad school and doing all that. But
crazy,
it's
law school.
crazy.
Yeah.
But Grace had just been born. Like, y'all were home from the hospital. I felt like, what does this guy have me in his hat? Like, Grace had just been born. Jennifer was still recovering. Y'all just gotten home from the hospital. And, like, it was me, you, in the den, and you had her in the little cradle thing for part of the time, and then was holding her part of the time.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there holding your brand new, your child that was just born.
Come on.
Tell him how to do school assembly. So
That's awesome.
It was awesome. It was awesome. I want to talk just for a few minutes today, and just real quick for everybody listening, we're doing this backstage at a gathering. So there's 2,100 youth pastors across the hall, and if you've never been around youth pastors, they're not quiet. So, and nor do they need to be quiet. So if you hear a little something, ladies and gentlemen, it's we're doing this backstage with a big event going on right next to us. But David, one of the things I wanted to ask you about that I think would be incredibly helpful for, I know at least the listeners that contact me, is you're known for a lot of things. You are an anointed evangelist. You're a preacher, teacher, pastor, all those things. I've watched you lead in your own evangelistic organization. I've watched you, back in the day of Billy Graham Evangelistic Associations, kind of when he was in his fourth quarter of ministry, they tapped you to come in and do a lot of their, I think they used the phrase youth associate back then. And so you did a lot of stuff for the Graham Association. Then I watched you become an author. Then I watched you go, hey, I'm going to pull the pin on the grenade and plant a church in Birmingham. And then you went to Liberty University and completely reoriented that culture, really brought a scope and a sequence and a method and core values to that culture, which shaped, Convocation went from being a thing to the thing. And more importantly, everybody sees what happens on screen. You shape the culture, and this is what most people don't realize about your time at Liberty. The amount of students going on mission and on short-term mission trips, increased exponentially. And that was, I watched you, that was your biggest joy, while you're there. Then you go from that to start something else. After 7 or 8 years, and you started this thing. It was already in existence, and it had a name because it was named after a song, and that's probably never a good thing.
Angel Armies,
Angel Armies, and with your buddy Chris Tomlin, but made it this amazing. When people asked me what it was that you were doing, I went, basically, he is a strategist and middleman to make sure that everybody that cares about adoption and foster care ministry has everything that they need so that the church can eliminate this crisis in our culture. And so I've watched you go to several places, and yes, you're anointed, yes, you're a preacher, yes, you're an author, but one of the things that has been so cool to watch is that you're also a cultural architect. You're able not just to cast vision, but to somehow be in the mix of it all and be the catalyst to create culture. Now, very quickly, my favorite definition of culture comes from the indigenous people, and they define culture as this: culture is shared memory. And so you have created a lot of shared memory all the places you go, that the fruit of that shared memory is a healthy culture. So I wanted us to talk a little bit about culture, how you created it, how you just create the right atmosphere for certain values to take root, and all of those different things. But just speak to that for a moment. Why is that such a big deal to you?
First of all, thank you, man. You're giving me a lot more credit. It was a team of people, that I was gifted to be able to be surrounded by, who were so much better at their tasks than I was. And so I have, my entire life, or especially life in ministry, I just feel like I've written in on the coattails of greater men and women, and at Liberty, you just have good eggs and you can make a good omelet. We just had a great team of people who co-labored together. But to go back to your question.
You did, but David, you put that team together. I watched it. You built it.
God brought them together.
A lot of people. He did, and I know.
They had skin in the game.
God be
they
the
loved
glory.
the vision.
They did.
Yeah, many of them were students from that place themselves, and so they went through the gauntlet, and they remembered when they felt this, disjointed. They remembered what they loved about it. So they came in the kitchen, having been the customer in the dining room before, and that was something I wasn't afforded. I didn't know those things that they knew. And so thank you, man. But I'll say this: every leader is a culture shaper. Everywhere you go, you're dragging in these memories, you're dragging in these convictions, you're dragging in these undertones and overtones and what you bring in. And for me, we as a family, and this is before we even had our kids, Jennifer and I decided that we were going to put on paper things that we wanted to ascribe to, things that we felt like, honestly, we weren't trying to build culture in our marriage and then later on take it to work with us. They were things that we wanted to hold each other accountable to the best that we could. And we knew that we didn't bat 1,000, on these. We knew that we were going to fail. We knew that there were going to be so many seasons, and this has been so true everywhere I've ever been, including as a father, including as a dad, including as a friend. We knew that there are times when you're prescribing them more than their description of where you are. But you're prescribing. You're like, Lord, forgive me that I wasn't honorable, but help me to be honorable or whatever. And so Jen and I started to put some language together that was a bit of a common cry of sorts. And we said, look, we want this. And can I just go back and say, like, the original intent wasn't even to like have stuff that was going to be on a wall or things we were going to teach our kids. We were like, what are the things that attract the anointing of God? And what are the things that detract the anointing of God? What are the things that God goes, I love that, and I'm going to put my hand on that? What makes God double down on a marriage, on an individual? And so we started to come up with these words, and a few of them were H's in the beginning. A few of them weren't. It took like we didn't sit down and go, we got to whiteboard this thing, and we're going to walk out of a weekend and have them. We just started to put some language together. And then little by little, God began to shape them more towards, words that had the word H around them. And actually, Brad Lomenick had written a book called H3. And two of those H's, we had that essence, but we didn't have those words. And that book actually shaped two of those words for us. And so a lot of them are borrowed. A lot of them, I'm a culture vulture. Everywhere I go, I learn and listen. A lot of them were taught, by other places that I've been. And so we began to put some words together.
Very important. I want to just, can I put a pin here?
Yeah.
You just did something very important, David, and most leaders don't, and this is a little bit of a side note, but it's a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
And I respect you for it. Most leaders don't footnote. You just footnoted. Yeah. You just honored Brad with like, hey, I had this idea, but his vernacular, his verbiage, his language helped me codify that.
Oh, yeah.
And so but most leaders would just go, yeah, here it is. It's this H, and here's the and never take that 2 seconds to go, let me footnote that real quick.
Yeah.
That's that.
Oh my gosh,
that
man!
It's so important, and it's
my
I think
whole
it comes
night
from insecurity. But
my whole life is a footnote.
Yeah.
like every sermon, is inspired by something I read or something I've heard. I don't know if any of our H's, that's what we call them. We call our 8 convictions H's. I don't know if any of them were original. Like inspired by the Holy Spirit, but the Holy Spirit used a culture, a person, something. Honestly, sometimes we saw something and we want it to be the contradiction of it. So sometimes you learn by going somewhere and going, we want to do that. Sometimes you go into something and you go, we want to do the opposite of that. We remember the emotion of how that felt, and we want people to feel very different than that. And so we came up with these H's, and we had 7, but a team member at one of my former places actually gave us the 8th one, gave us health. But they are, H words that we just kind of gravitate towards, and they're the essence by which what we do. So they're not what we do, but how we do what we do. And so it's honor, humility, hustle, hunger, health, hospitality, holiness. So you're talking about just, again, honestly, things that you would say about Jesus and things that we pray people would say about the people of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so whenever I've gone to a place, whether it was Christ City Church or it was Liberty or for others, which used to be called Angel Armies like you referred to, whenever I've been in the hiring process, I've told people, hey, I'm not saying they're better, but I'm just telling you, like, this is the essence by which I'm leading. And if I'm allowed, I'd like to introduce these words into the mix of how we do what we do. And so we hire through the H's. We're recruiting all the rewords through the H's. We're rewarding through the H's. We're realigning through the H's. We're, if we need to, fire somebody, removing through the H's. And so we had these words, and they're the essence of what we do. And then when I'm sitting with someone who I want on my team, I'm not looking for someone who's willing to put up with the H's so that they can get the check every 2 weeks and get a salary. I'm looking for people who go, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I shared those. Now, they might not have them as H words, right? Like I might say holiness, you might say godliness. But what I'm looking for is for someone who says, I sense that the Holy Spirit living in me and living through me helps me be set apart. I live a life of distinction. Not perfection, but distinction. And if I'm called to lead from a place of visibility, in ministry, or if I'm called to lead in any essence, I need to live a life worthy of imitation. And that's only going to happen. Only one worth imitating is Christ himself, right? It's only going to happen when I have holiness in my life, for example. Or I lead from a place of honor. And what that means is, I'm going to do everything I can to see people in their fullness and in their value. And so whenever we were hiring somebody, Brent, like I remember, for others, for example, startup of sorts. We were looking for team members, and I would sit with someone and I would say, hey, these are the things that we value. And because he gave us some language, it was an immediate talking point. And I'd be like, hey, if we're looking for someone on our team, I think you're gonna do the task well, but I want to make sure you do it with hustle. I want to make sure you do it with humility. I want to make sure you do it, without violating health. Spiritual health, physical health, emotional health. And so that's kind of the essence of what those H's were. And again, sometimes the enemy whispers in my ear like, man, that is a really good billboard, and they look good on a wall and on a poster and on T-shirts and stuff like that, but you didn't live those out. And the truth of the matter is we all constantly fail at living up to the standards that we set for ourselves. But that doesn't give us an exit to not set standards for ourselves. And so again, they continue to be prescriptions in prayers that they would become more and more descriptions of who we are.
As you're talking about it, it's a great way to think through, this is what we're ascribing to and this is what we're aiming at for this culture, and it's magnetic for those you want on your team. But I think part of the reason I've watched over the last, you and I are sitting in Orlando, we've already been in a few cities together. We're doing 5 youth pastor summits. You've already been in front of, and I know we're small potatoes compared to a lot of things, but you've already been in front of, I would guess at this point, well north of 1,200 churches in these 3 events.
Yeah, amazing.
And so,
thanks for, by the way, let me just pause and say, thanks for affording that to someone like me. That's just amazing.
That's
what
no-brainer.
A gift.
It's a no-brainer.
It's humble.
But so I'm watching, and we have, I'm not going to list them, but we have some amazing communicators at this event.
Yeah.
And I'm not just blowing smoke, David, but what you're doing has been like a moment for people so far.
Yeah.
Where it's been this weird combination of very inspiring while being hyper practical.
Yeah.
And I think as I'm watching and as I'm listening to the feedback, because I get to hear all that.
Yeah.
What it is we live in a polarized age.
Yeah.
In which, sadly, everybody goes, we need to fight a culture war, or we need to get the right guy in office, or if we could just do this, everything would be fine, or people wanted me to have a guy swallow a sword here. I canceled it. I was going to do it, but I just thought it was a bad idea.
When you texted me and said, hey, man, would you mind swallowing the sword?
I'm telling you, I thought,
what's the spell check? I mean, I think that's...
I was trying, if we could figure out how, I was thinking like Mary had her soul pierced, or, we just couldn't tie it in.
I told you, I said, look, dude, I'll try it. But then you told me to take my shirt off before I did it.
That was
said,
the
look, guys,
deal breaker. Yeah.
Like, I'm so hairy, it'd be like, people are like, why is he wearing a fleece jacket in
Why
Orlando?
is a bear swallowing a sword? I mean... I'm not well, and so this
is that gonna make it?
It's gonna make it, I promise you. There's a lot of junk that makes it, man. I get in trouble all the time.
It's a good thing no one listens.
Nobody listens. All 5 people. My wife's gonna get mad. She's the only one that listens. No, but as these things are basically placed up as aspirations for us, and I'm not, again, use the word havoc. To me, it contradicts so much of the tide of evangelicalism right now.
Yeah.
And I'm not throwing shade. I'm not being cynical about the church. I hate it when people are that way.
Yeah.
I love the church. I'm not being critical of the church. I'm thinking critically about the church.
Sure.
And so the reason it's so appealing is because it stands. It's like almost like when Paul's. I think everything you described is in the book of Philippians. And so when Paul's like, hey, your citizenship is in heaven, live your life worthy of the gospel of Jesus, people are going, oh, that's a portrait of that in a polarized culture.
Yeah.
And so it's
really
like
good.
this weird breath of fresh air, if you will.
And so maybe for somebody who hasn't been a part of this context, obviously what you're referring to is that you've afforded me an opportunity in these 5 different, youth pastor summits where next gen leaders are coming together. The opportunity to speak. And on this run, because I think I've spoken for you at least 10 years,
Yes,
at these youth pastor
More than
summits.
that.
What a gift. But man, I came to you and I said, hey, I feel like as I'm listening to a lot of organizations that I'm getting to consult with, that a lot of them do not have common language. Or if they do, they've kind of set it to the side because they don't really believe in it. And I want to help bring unity and clarity by challenging people and cheering people on to ask the Lord for common language for their H's. By the way, God's already given them to us. You can go to the fruit of the Spirit, and that's so much better than the H's.
Yeah.
Love, joy. He's like, put that on a wall and prescribe it, But and you guys have afforded that to me. And it's been interesting because it really has touched the chord. I mean, we walked out of Preston Wood's session, and Jeff and I, Dr. Wallace and I, and Ryan, and we were saying, like, this seems to have really touched a chord. Like, this seems to have really resonated with people.
It's hitting a nerve.
Because I'm learning that 9 out of 10 organizations either don't have language or have the kind of language that they don't really gravitate towards. They don't really love, or maybe feels a little tired, or maybe it's sloppy. And this has been a really, like you said, practical thing. And I'm usually not the practicum guy at things like this. I'm more the motivate you, cheer you on, challenge you. I'm more on the emotional side than the devotion. But this season, it's felt like this has given me a chance to really help people go, hey, your team needs to know. It's kindness for them to have clarity. Your team needs to know, this is who we are. This is where we're trying to head out. This is what we're heading towards. And this is our win.
Yeah.
And once they know that, then so much of the confusion and the fog goes away. And you can be heading in the same direction. I don't know of an organization that doesn't have place to run. Or doesn't have clarity on, like, okay, on this play, this is your task, and this is your task, and this is your task. I know of ministries who have really excelled and have had incredible impact without organizational girth, backbone, transmission to hold it, a chassis to hold it. I know of organizations that have been used greatly, but they've never maintained longevity.
Yeah, there's no sustainability there.
That's right. And so that's been the heart behind, like, giving out our H's to people and saying, hey, all I want to do is inspire you by sharing, like, how this has worked for us. For you to go, like, hey, why don't you get in a room with your team and come up with your own and ask the Lord to give you words that you can be the architects. God's sitting at the head of the table, that you can go, and then you got a place to run. You now have common language that you can reward, you can recruit, right? You can realign with, and so so it's been interesting to watch those things come alive.
You're a high honor guy. It's one of the things that I've respected about you over the years, and have been the benefactor. I mean, like, I've benefited from that so many times. Such a blessing. But I remember there was a season. There was probably several of these seasons while you were at Liberty. But Liberty is one of those places that, because of what it is, it's always got a target on its back. And right, wrong, indifferent, just, it's huge. It's the largest Christian university in the world. It's just, you're going to have that. It doesn't matter what you are, where you are. If you're the biggest and you think you're the biggest and the best, you're probably going to have a target on your back. But I remember one day I was talking to you, and some students were saying this or that or the other about the past, or about this, or about what's happening. And you had this reporter that was spending a few weeks trying to track this story down, and you gave them time, and they came in your office and they went, one of your students said this, and it was pretty unkind. What do you have to say? And you would you refused to go there with that reporter. It was just honor. Well, that's a brother, and that person's been redeemed, and they're made in the image of God, and I just choose. And you basically just flipped the script. And went, no, you want dirt, I'm going to give you honor.
Yeah.
And
That's hard.
It's hard. Yeah.
In the flesh, without the work of the Holy Spirit, because he deserves all the credit for that.
Mm-hmm.
Without the work of the Holy Spirit, like, my natural tendency is, you mess with me, I kill your mother. I mean, like, that's kind of my personality, like, and
That
honestly,
sounds like the Iranian Revolution.
Yeah,
Anyways.
and on top of that, man, in ministry,
Mm-hmm.
in a calling on your life to pastor and to shepherd, the worst thing someone can say something about you, is an accusation,
Yeah.
is to say that they let you in, that you came into, like, you had a conversation with them. It wasn't from the stage, like in a one-on-one setting, that you abused your power, or that you gaslit them, or that you deferred, what was important to them to kind of bring around what was important to you. And when someone says something like that, I've learned through the years, first of all, stop and pause before you get defensive and go, there might actually be truth to it. Maybe I'm blind to the fact that I was dishonoring. Or maybe I'm blind to the fact that I did do wrong there, and I didn't. Because, again, man, the only thing I'm very consistent in is being inconsistent in my walk with God. But in that particular case, I knew the backstory, and I knew that there was no winning on that one. And I knew what had happened with that student. And rather than like winning the point, I thought it'll feel really good if I defend myself and like throw 3 facts on the table that a reporter will then put in a global publication that will make me feel good about myself. But for the rest of this person's life, they're gonna feel like, I just swatted them, and I won the point, but I lost the person. And so what I've learned in that moment is, like, hey, this is not a courtroom where this reporter or the public opinion of people who are going to read this article are going to make like, this isn't like I have to bring evidence to prove my,
Yeah.
And so instead, I normally try to choose the option of, like, don't take the bait, don't defend yourself. And honestly, the older I get, I'm a guy in my 50s now, man. I've just learned that you don't convince people. Like, it's not like you bring facts to the table and it convinces people. Like, that reporter had already come with an assignment of where she wanted to end up. And so facts just got in the way, honestly, in that moment. And even she was a great lady. And honestly, like, I ended up really liking her as an individual. And I thought she had, and I read the article that she read later. And honestly, there were things in it that brought light to things in my life that I needed to improve on in my walk with God. And so there's those undertones in it. I wish I could tell you that I've really modeled honor well. I think I've been able to model honor publicly more than the average person. So people think that we've modeled honor well. But I think that I've certainly failed at it a lot. Honor, one of the things that defines honor, like if you have 5 or 6 things that like spotlight what honor is, one of them would be say about people when they're not in the room what you would say about them if they're in the room.
Yeah.
And that's the part I struggle with the most.
Yeah.
So I'm really good at honoring people when they're in the room. I'm not as good. Pray for me. That God will continue to work in me at learning to say, you know what? I'm going to pretend when I'm having a conversation with Brent about this guy, that this guy's sitting at dinner with us. And what I say about him, when he's not in the room is what I would say about him when he is in the room.
Yeah.
That's the part. That's the weakest link in the chain of honor in David Nasser's life.
That's
and as I'm getting older in my faith, God's going like, hey, that's the part I need you to work on, And so, so you just brought out one of the H's, And so, I've shared before that this illustration, I think at your events, but this lady in Rwanda gave me the definition of honor that kind of has haunted me for years. Yeah, she was a pastor of a church, and she was loving and serving a group of people that as a people group had literally taken the lives of her family and put a gash on her face. And we asked her how she could do that because it just wasn't natural.
You're talking about the genocide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she answered through a translator about the very people who had harmed her family, had put that scar on her face, but that she had chosen every day to wake up and serve and love. She said, if they're expensive to God, they're expensive to me.
Wow.
And I just couldn't shake that, man.
Yeah.
And I thought that's the best definition of honor I've ever heard. That if Christ sees Joe Biden, if Christ sees Donald Trump, if Christ sees Kennedy, if Christ sees David Nasser as expensive enough to die on the cross, if he doesn't cheapen me, then why would, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Who do I think that I am, that I would cheapen someone else? And so, yeah, so I think that's where I got that definition, and that's what I ascribe to. But again, you got the prescription, and then you got the description.
Yeah.
And in the prescription, you feel really good about and well-versed in some parts of it. But God continues to say to me, hey, you tend to leave a room where someone's, and you're too much of a coward to say what you want to say to them, but then you're willing to go out of the room and say it about them.
Yeah.
And do you feel like practicing my presence, my omnipresence everywhere, does not also include honoring them when they're not in the room? So anyway, let me ramble on that. But
no,
like
I'm
that,
getting convicted.
What I want to say to you is, like, I am so far away from these H's, but they are so important to me that I'm not going to let the enemy go, you're a hypocrite, you don't buy into them, these are lies. And so you're like, no, I'm going to, until the day I'm complete in Christ and I'm home, I know I've been justified by faith. I'm being sanctified by faith. And one day I'll be glorified by faith. But until then, like, this is the play we're going to run.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, these have been so impactful. I watched as they kind of materialized into this codified state that you now have them. But I've never seen it go past that outside of a message. So I'm selfishly asking this question.
Yeah.
Is this going to be in a resource that I can hold in my hands and pass out to lots of people?
Man, yes, I hope so. When you see that it's resonating with people, you begin to think, well, this could help people.
Very much so.
You know? And I feel like one of the reasons...
That's why I'm asking it. That's why I'm saying it. Yeah. I know it'll help people.
Yeah.
This could be one of those...
Yeah.
Like I think of this, like there's a book called Lynchpin by a guy named Seth Godin.
Oh yeah.
I require all of our teammates before they come on staff to read Lynchpin.
Yeah.
And this is like a linchpin for not just Christian community, but primarily like, okay, if you're in church culture and your ministry culture, and it's a linchpin type of book, which is about the best compliment I think I could give.
Wow, what a compliment. Thank you, buddy. I mean, listen, yes, I think that it would be good stewardship of what God's given, because it's all borrowed from Him, right? And it'd be to try to put some of these thoughts on paper and get maybe someone to help me who's better at organizing the thoughts, and not just to put our H's in, but to just really talk about common language, as in, like, how do you establish vision? I have this really weird definition of vision, and it seems to be very helpful to people in establishing their vision, and so I've been thinking about maybe the book will begin with, like, making my case on the front end, right? Like the intro of the book, chapter 1, of like, this is why common language matters. Yeah. And this is why organizations don't have longevity without being pickled in language that everybody buys into. It's simple, it's profound, it's sticky, you can come back around to it, and just kind of making the case for, like, common language. Yeah. And then going, okay, let's start with, what's vision? And I'll give it to you real quick. My definition of vision is being tethered to the past, meaning not held back to it, but grounded in your past. Like, don't ever forget where you came from. Being grounded in your past, being clear in your present, and being hopeful in your future. So people normally think about vision, and they think about being hopeful in the future.
Just future.
A picture of a preferred way. But I think that it's a kite without a string if you forget where you came from. You know? So like, for example, at Liberty, it's such a clear statement. It says training champions for Christ. But then right before that it says since 1971. The address of the university, and again, that place doesn't bat 1,000 at all. No organization I've ever been a part of passed that. But what one of the things I really admired about the place, the address of the university is 1971 University Boulevard. And so they don't ever want to forget where they came from. You know? And again, they're not stuck on the past, but they're tethered in like, hey, we want to remember, like, we had nothing but duct tape and vision when we got going. And we want to honor the people who got us out of Egypt. They didn't get to punch it into the promised land. We're still in the desert.
There's a mountain in the middle of nowhere with some trailers on it. I mean,
exactly. And so I think a lot of times people are so excited about going to the future that they don't find themselves really honoring the past and tethering to the past. So I want to be tethered to the past. Maybe there's a better word for that, as I'm and then I want to be super clear. I think about that place in the mall where you walk up to the sign that says "You are here." A lot of people don't have clarity on where they are, so it's hard to get to where you want to go if you don't exactly know where you are, right? And so it's clarity in the present is, hey, it's fourth quarter, and it's third down, and we have 1 minute left of the game. And normally we wouldn't go for it for fourth down. But it's fourth quarter. We got one. We give the ball back. They're probably going to run the clock. So now that you know where you are, you can project to where you want to go. Does that make sense? Wow. And so it's being tethered in the past or grounded in the past. Maybe that's a better word. That's the black and the red of the two better. And then being clear in the present and then being hopeful in the future. You know? And so, and then really talking about the calling of ministry, the difference between vision and prophetic vision. You know who had vision? Some horrific people had vision. Hitler had vision. Right? Mussolini had vision. Some horrific people had vision, and they saw it come into fruition by manipulating and standing, and selling their horrific vision to people. What we have is prophetic vision. It's so much bigger. It's God-given vision. And by the way, when God gives you a vision, he's saying, I'm going to accomplish this. You can join me or not. I'm going to make all things new. You can join me or not. I don't need you. You get to, if you want, join me in my mission. And so, and the beauty of God's given vision is prophetic vision always has this promise of anytime he gives you vision, he gives you provision. So it's like, hey, it's your vision, God. You fund it. Now I just got to be faithful in the next step and the next step and next step. So I think in the book, I'd like to, in coming up with common language, talk about vision and help people go, where do you want to get to? What's the end goal? What's the vision? And then I want to kind of make my case that vision typically stays the same. Strategy changes. And then say, but the way that you accomplish strategy, some people call it, their values, I like to call them convictions, is these. And then talk about building those kind of cases. So I don't know if people would be interested in it, but I think
I
it's
don't want to
touching
speak
a chord
on
with
the
some
collective we, but the answer is yes.
Well, just you and me. It'll be a coloring book.
No, I'm speaking for
everybody.
everybody. I'm going to go ahead and do it. The answer is yes. I'm telling you, man, I'll go ahead and buy the first 1,000 copies, and everybody that listens to this will get a copy. I'm dead serious. Which really I should only buy 7 because that's about how many people that listen. But I will. It's needed. I'm not just saying it because I love you. I'm not just saying it because I look up to you. It's needed. And here's what happens. You mentioned this earlier, and here's a big. We don't like to talk about it this way, but here's a big part of why it's needed. We have mission and vision statements at our church, but they're old, dusty language. Our pastor went to a conference. Somebody said you need to have it. He maybe worked in a staff meeting. Maybe he did it on his own. It got put on a wall, but it's a document lost on a computer somewhere, basically. And it may be on a wall, but we forget that it's there. And what happens is this mission, vision statement, whatever you want to call it, that we can't even articulate if we don't read it off the wall, becomes this catch-all for all of our junk.
Yeah.
And so, like, I live obviously in Orlando, Central Florida, so we're no stranger to hurricanes. We get lots of hurricanes. And so, you have a bad storm blow through, and if it's bad, people's roofs are torn off. And I fly all the time, so I'm coming into Orlando all the time. I look out the window, you just see a sea of blue tarps.
Yeah.
But what's underneath that blue tarp is a lot of damage and a lot of destruction. But here's the crazy thing: you waited a year, and most of that's gone. But there's always a few holdouts who just go, "I'm comfortable living under the blue tarp.
Yeah.
I'm just comfortable living with this
kind of
brokenness."
functioning.
It's kind of functioning. It's a Band-Aid for all my junk.
Yeah.
It gives me cover for all the damage.
Yeah.
And that's what these old dusty mission statements, they're like a blue tarp that just okay, we can get by.
But under that blue tarp is typically someone who's exhausted, overworked, underthanked, underappreciated, and they're not thriving in the neighborhood. They're surviving in the neighborhood. And I think what a new roof can give you is excitement.
That's what I'm saying. This is could be.
And can I just say, like, every organization I've been a part of, probably after I left, reimagined their own language.
Yeah. Okay.
Like they could hang on to them or not hang on to them.
Yeah.
Like they were not mine anyway. But and I think that's okay. Like I'm talking right now to an organization, a church, about possibly going to be on staff there. They have very clear, exciting language. They call it 16 words. So like their services start Saturday night, 5:16, 8:16, 9:16, 11:16. So they really rally around this 16 words mantra, and it's amazing. But when I was talking to the elders, I was like, that ain't broke. That's fixed. And the question that I've been asking a lot is like, but do people gravitate to it? Does it still have excitement? Does it still have life? And is it set to the side? And so if a place like that already has language like that, then man,
contextualize.
Come on, keep going. But there might be room for my H's too.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that the pastor before, if I go be the pastor of this church, God calls me there, wasn't living out the H's. He just didn't have them as 8H words.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the next guy has to adhere to them. And I think what happens is it's just a way to describe and prescribe, right? Common language.
Yeah.
And it's okay if it comes and goes for a while. So like at Alabama, and I know you're not an Alabama fan. You should be. But at Alabama, like Nick Saban brought in, a set of ways and a set of language and a set of things that they did.
Yeah.
The new coach comes in, he's going to have his own.
Yeah.
But the vision is the same.
Yeah.
The vision at Alabama is every year is to win the SEC, then go from there and win the national championship game, right? Like so, the vision stays the same. The strategy changes.
Yeah.
By the way, even under Saban's lifespan of being the coach there, he changed the strategy. They went from like big old hosses that just kind of ran old school football, right? Like mean all day, just murder ball, to like, no, we got to snap the ball quick, and we got to be more like Oregon because the game has changed. And so again, these H's I write down on pencil in a culture that I go to work at. But
That's
they
a
are
good way of saying that.
Sharpie in my heart.
Yeah.
And it's okay. I have to put my ego to the side when I leave a place, and they go, we're not doing the H's anymore. The new leader comes in, and he's excited about new words.
Sure.
Grant them that gift of like, absolutely, let's go, And so it's important to know that. I'm curious, do you have any, like, that you take to places you go? I'd love to hear your, like, I've never asked you. Like, do you have common language that?
We do. We have some language that we use at Student Leadership University. I don't think it's as codified as your H's are. I have a set of principles. I have 8 principles that I'll probably 3 times a year in a staff meeting, we'll just remind ourselves of these. And it's not just me, like I'll have somebody else share them because I want them just to be ingrained in our staff. They are the filter by which we hire, and if we have to let somebody go, they're also the filter by which we make decisions. Like right now, we're going through a major shift. In fact, I'm going to make that announcement across the hall in a few minutes. We're going through a major shift in our organization because we got some good problems. and we're going, okay, here's our core values, and
Right.
so if we don't shift, we're not consistent with these. So
Yeah.
we have, but they're not. As I'm listening to you say this, I'm going, gosh, that's so smart, because I mean, it's so much easier to remember a word than a statement that's a principle.
Yeah.
And so that's I'm actually rethinking what
Yeah,
we've
man.
done.
And
As I
can I just
listen
tell
to
you, like, as I'm learning from better leaders than me, just about all of them think that 8 is too much. 8's too many. Like, simple it down, stew it down to 3. You know, and so even now, I'm challenged by that.
I originally had 14, and somebody on my staff said get it down to below 10.
Yeah.
So I ended up with, I think it's 8
Yeah.
principles. But
Yeah.
man, yeah.
But it's got to be simple enough that people can just kind of listen and buy in, which is why, like, even now, listening to that church that God might be calling us to.
Yeah, that's a
You know,
lot.
they've
16.
no, it's not 16. It's not 16.
Oh, okay.
It's 16 words. There's 3 statements and 16
okay.
words.
Okay.
And what I like about that more than I like about my 8 H's is that it is more stewed down. It's less broth, more stew. You know, it's simmered.
Yeah.
And so if someone's listening right now and they're like challenged to like get a notepad out and start with their team, which by the way, the worst thing you could do is sit by yourself and start writing them.
Yeah.
Get buy-in, get
Yeah.
people in the room, get them to talk. And I would say maybe a scribe for less than 8.
Yeah, maybe.
You know?
Yeah, but definitely we'll put the 8 in the show notes down
Yeah.
below for everybody that's listening. I want to ask you this before we're done, Dave. Like, you're a guy who's always thinking ahead. You're a guy who's always preparing. You're a guy who's always dreaming. And so I love asking this question of leaders I look up to. At this stage of the game, at this stage of the journey, in your story, what excites you the most? Besides being a granddad.
Yeah. Man, I wake up these days in my life really excited about my personal love affair with God. And this is going to sound so silly, but I've never been in a season of rest until the last few months of my life. This was a mistake that I made. I mean, my counselor said, "You're ignorant." And at first I was like, but then he said, what I mean by that is you ignored ignorant. You ignored, the signs because you were so insecure in yourself and that you didn't think through like, hey, where's the sustainable pace in this? Where's the rest in this? But, you're asking me, this question is very, and I'm kind of giving you a very personal answer. But what excites me the most is that, man, I left Virginia, and I'm not saying this about anybody in Virginia. This was just me, and most of it's self-afflicted. I left pretty worn out and wounded. And I think I came into Virginia kind of worn out and wounded.
Yeah.
And I think before Virginia, when I was church planning, I went into church planning kind of worn out and wounded. I think I got saved when I was 18. Have it, guys. Like, let's get it done, guys. Hard work ethic. All these things people say is a merit badge.
Yeah.
Like, I just put my head down and started working, traveling, speaking, writing, then, like church planning in the inner city. Then from there, going to Liberty and never found a sustainable pace of rest, which is why, like, someone from our team had to come and go, you know what H is missing? Health. And I'm like, oh, you know what I mean?
Your blind spot, yeah.
Guilty.
Yeah.
And so when I left Liberty, I should have when I was coming into when I was going into Christ City Church, I should have said, hey, I need a season of rest. Like, I need the swelling of the. I just played a bunch of tournaments. I need a season of rest so that I can have longevity.
Yeah.
But I didn't. And then I went and church planted, and then I needed a season of rest from there. But I went straight into Liberty, and I needed a season of rest from there. But I went straight into For Others. And it's exciting work, all of it, and it's worthwhile. And you put your head on the pillow, and you're just like, God, people got saved today. And God, people got decided. Like, it's all amazing, but you find your value system sometimes when you're insecure on like how you produce.
Yeah.
And because of that, I was ignorant.
Yeah.
And so when I left for others this time, and I left it, I left the job. I loved that job. I just missed preaching, honestly, more than anything else. When I left it, Jennifer said, hey, I want us to make our next decision. I want the Lord to tell us what our next assignment is out of a place of rest. And the last 3 months of my life, man, I've just found rest. And my head's clear. I'm seeing things better. And you know, when you're healthy, but people around you are less worn out. You're not wearing them out. You're not hurting them. So when you're asking me like, what am I excited about? I'm really excited about like it's become about me and God again. Like I'm really excited about opening my Bible, not because I want to get a sermon out of it, but because I just want to spend time with Him, or listening to preachers and podcasts because I'm just hungry for learning. And so I feel like a child again. I feel like, you know, people go, what is it when people have been married a long time? We renewed our vows.
Yeah.
I feel like God and I have, during this season of rest, we've renewed our vows.
That's amazing. That's great.
Not that God needed to renew His vow to me.
No, I understand. Yeah.
But that I've just been distracted.
Yeah.
And I needed to date again.
Yeah.
Get back in again.
Yeah.
And man, I bought on Facebook this little $800 hot tub.
You bought an $800 hot tub?
Yeah,
was it used?
Yes.
Okay.
We wiped it down with Clorox.
Great, that's wonderful.
And dude, I'll go sit in there and just talk to the Lord. And that's what I get excited. You know, so when you say, what are you excited about? I'm just excited about like growing in my faith and learning things about my faith, and so that's probably what I'm most excited about. I think, by the way, if I can maintain that, that's where I will get the longevity in my life.
Well, that's what I was gonna add. Like, okay, so you've this pattern existed.
Yeah.
The rest can't be an anomaly. It has to be a rhythm.
100%.
And so
I gotta learn that, man.
Yeah. How do you implement that in the next phase so you don't get right back into every day, all day, and never, you know, in a ministry devoid of rest?
Yeah. Well, you surround yourself. There's wisdom in the counsel of many. You surround yourself with people that will speak that into your life. You don't lead out of ignorance and thinking that like I can do this and I'm good and I can lead out of margin. And rather than trying to find balance, because there are going to be seasons where you're building and seasons when you're resting, try to find rhythm inside the balance.
I hate the word balance.
Yeah.
In fact, I teach against it in our staff culture. Like, balance is a myth.
Yeah.
And
like
I don't really see it in Scripture.
Oh, this season for you, like, you know, you're not, I come in here and I just speak. You have to make an announcement, do podcasts, speak, run this event. I'm sure somebody's going to say something from stage that somebody's going to want to have a conversation with you about. They're mad about. Someone's going to. So, like, you have to manage so much. There's no such thing as rest.
Yeah.
Like, you live 45 minutes away from here, but you stayed at a hotel 15 minutes away from here because literally every minute matters this weekend. Yeah. There's no such thing as balance this weekend for you.
Yeah.
But there's rhythm.
Right.
And rhythm means I'm too busy in this weekend to not ground myself in God's word and in prayer.
Yeah.
That's rhythm.
Yeah.
That the daily rhythm, the thing that continues to show up no matter how busy or how not busy I am, are the essentials.
Yeah.
And honestly, I let a lot of that get away from me. And in this season, I've learned to find rest again. Jennifer's like, you're back. She's like, I didn't even know you were not back. You know, it's kind of like when you swallow and your ears pop and you didn't even know you could, you know. And
you're back.
And rather than blaming other people or like when I say wounded and worn out, like it wasn't like I was wounded by others. Like, man, look, I brought that on myself so often, you know. And so I'm just saying to say, and it's not that you don't venture out and get wounded and worn out again, but what I want to do in the future is I just want to make sure that I don't compromise a rhythm in my life that I lead out in.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good.
And just about how many friends do you and I have who are no longer in ministry because they led out of margin and out of exhaustion with their guards down.
Well, last night
That's when they got
I was walking into the hotel, and a lot of our student pastors staying in that hotel, and I had a guy and his wife were getting out of the pool, and they were dripping wet, wrapped in their towels, and yelling at me from across the parking lot. And I turned around, and they're hey, and they come over, and he said, "Man, I've been coming for I came for the first time 12, 14 years ago, and I've been probably 8 out of the last 14 years."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Do you remember this guy when you had him speak?" And he said a name, and I went, "Oh my God, that guy's not in ministry anymore."
Yeah.
And then about 5 minutes later, he goes, "Oh, I remember when that guy," and that guy's not in ministry anymore. And I just go, wow, that's And what they all had in common, they didn't all have the same sin. They committed this exact same sin.
Yeah.
But they all were missing something that you're talking about. There was an element, an ingredient in the recipe of pilgrimage, I would say.
Yeah.
That was not present, and that snuffed out everything else that mattered in their life.
It's typically isolation.
Mm-hmm.
They know that there's, if they're a part of community, they belong. People will help them realign or whatever. So they do it. They go into isolation mode, or I go into isolation mode, and I go into unsustainable pace. I go into work mode. I put my and I lead out of margin. I lead out of exhaustion. And by the grace of God, bro, by the grace of God, in those seasons, long seasons, somehow by the grace of God, I haven't committed adultery.
Yeah.
But I don't look at the brother who did and go, what a horrific. I just go, man, bro, I get it. I get what it's like to be so tired. I watched the A-Day for Bama the other day, and they were talking about these linebackers, and the new coach said, he said, man, I don't have enough linemen right now to switch them in and out. And he said, and my concern is we're going to run into the scrimmage, A-Day, 60,000 people watching, and he goes, what happens in the fourth quarter of a scrimmage like this is 300-pound guys that are tired get hurt. And that's so true. Giants that are tired get hurt. And how many times in ministry have we seen giants that are tired get hurt, right? And they and so by the grace of God, we're still in. And we want to finish well. And so one way to, by the grace of God, finish well is to find a more sustainable pace and to find rhythm and to really ground yourself in prayer and medication and meditation and fasting and solitude and the celebration of disciplines.
It's I was going to say there's been a book. One of the things that's helped me, and I believe it does fit into a couple spiritual disciplines. Because I think you got to have as your bedrock those spiritual disciplines if you're going to have health is escape. And so my son and I have we love to fish. And I live.
I saw you post on.
Man. So I live
Instagram,
right off the St. Johns River. I can pull out of my driveway and be at the boat ramp in 11 minutes. And so I know a boat, they all say, is a hole in the water you throw money into. It's been the best investment I've ever made because, I'm 8 hours, 9 hours out, just me and my 18-year-old. It's my hot tub. It's my hot tub, and I'm just with my 18-year-old son. We're having a great conversation, but my wife has a couple rules, and she's like, I want you to take your phone, but I want you to silence all of this. And so that I'm the only one getting to you. And then she's like, and I want you to do it at least 3 times a month. I want you out there at least 3 times a month.
That's so good.
And it's because she's going, when you're out there's a part of you that gets to decompress. And so that, I don't know if escape's the best word, but kind of breaking free from the grind a little bit. It's been a game changer for me.
And I know we're going long here, man, but can I just say, on rest, one of the things in my ignorance that I did is I defined rest wrong. You know, like it's not rest when you're just like taking a Saturday and watching an entire season of Stranger Things. That's not rest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're restless, and that's vision out. That's checking out. And I'm not trying to Jesus juke everybody who's listening and just go, you can't. Like there are times when it's just fun to go get away.
Yeah.
Rest is being. Well, where do you find who's your source of rest?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the place that, rest is grounding yourself in silence, and so that you can hear God, shutting out distractions so that you can. And so rest isn't like fasting from work so that you can feast on entertainment.
Yeah.
Rest is
Good word.
fasting from things so that you can feast at God's banqueting table. And so I'm having to really go back. And again, when you're saying, what do you get excited about? Like, born again, man. Like going back to when I first got saved, and like my rest was in like having a quiet time every day. My rest was in having prayer time in my car. And so rest for me now is more like I'm in the car driving to the airport, and rather than listening to one more podcast, like just shut it down for a minute. Be quiet for a second. And take 9 minutes. I have 9 minutes before I get to the airport. Take 9 minutes and go, I'm going to exercise gratitude. And just for 9 minutes, just tell God all the things I'm thankful for.
Yeah, so good.
You know?
Yeah.
Before I go stand in that TSA line. Like, I'm going to go 9 minutes of gratitude, and that's rest.
Yeah, because you'll lose all that when you stand in that TSA line.
That's right.
Because it is not as short as it's supposed to be.
But you know what I mean? So like,
I do. I know exactly what you're saying.
Defining rest has been a real thing for me recently, because I feel like so often I've shortchanged myself calling something rest. But it's been it's been a rest. I see Jesus as our model. Jesus, Scripture says in Mark 12:30, I think, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus went to a solitude place and prayed. And so Jesus was too busy. He knew what the day held for him. He was too busy to not find rest in the morning with the Father.
Yes.
And so what makes me think that if Jesus needed that, I don't need it?
There's a little arrogance there for
So whether it's a boat, a hot tub, or off under a tree, find time with the Father.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So good, buddy. So God, there's so many things. We could just keep going. But
what's the Bible say about getting tattoos? What's going on there?
Well, if I was under the old covenant, and lived in the time of Leviticus, I wouldn't do it. I tell you. But
you challenged me. This is good.
Yeah,
I'm getting a tattoo. I'm gonna just get like, what is it, like Leviticus 14:10 that says do no more?
I don't know.
Whatever it is.
Somebody hits
that
me
verse
up on
right here.
social every once in a while, and it's like, that's what you should do. No, I actually waited. To be honest with you, because I believe so strongly in exercising one's freedom with responsibility. One of my core principles, as I understand freedom in Christ, is don't make a decision that would cause somebody else to stumble in their freedom.
Yeah.
And so
it's making me stumble.
So is it really? I'll wear long sleeves around you. Yes.
Brother?
No, but I'll wear long sleeves around you. Yeah. And then I don't know. I was trying to think of something else offensive I could do in front of you. Like, no, I'm gonna wear long sleeves and walk around with my Trump Bible. So, but I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. I'm so kidding. I love Lee Greenwood. And so, but no, I in all seriousness, my son was not comfortable with it.
Oh, really?
So I'm 46 years old. I got this when I was 43.
Yeah.
I mean, I waited forever.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to get it in one of my 30s. I knew exactly the shop. I wanted to do it in Jerusalem at the oldest one in the world, and a lot of people do it there. And I had them, but I teach my kids. If they know anything I've said to them every day they know, Dad's going to say, all right, what's your job today?
Yeah.
And it's to wander well and shine like stars.
That's so good.
So I got wander well and 6 stars for my 6 kids.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, so it's I was
like, man, are you telling me you're like a 6-star?
No,
like,
no,
like,
the number
like
6.
Michelin?
Oh, no, no, but it's like, it's just
Yeah.
that paradigm of pilgrimage as being a disciple of Jesus that we see in the Old Testament, where the psalmist said, happy the people whose strength is in you, whose hearts are set on pilgrimage. So this is who we are.
Yeah.
And then
I love that, man.
Paul goes, as you're that, shine like stars in the world. So
Yeah.
I just...
That's a lifer. That's good.
Yeah. So my son's actually going to get it. But he can't
really
get a
good.
star until the stars are what you're teaching your children to do. That's like your arrows, if you will. And
I love that.
Yeah. So anyways, he's going to do that next year. We were going to do it this year, but we're not going to Israel this year. Nobody's really going to Israel right now. So
Because of Iranians.
because of your people, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
How heartbreaking is it, man? What's
It's
going on
so
right now
sad.
in that part of the world?
It is, and it is so sad. I'll tell you something strange. Since I've been going to Egypt the last several years,
Yeah.
Egypt is the only country I think that has political neutrality. And a lot of the guys I've talked to are like, yeah, as they go, so goes the Middle East. Because if they decide to go, no, we're not neutral. We're enemies now of Israel.
Wow.
It really could be a tipping point.
Yeah.
But they're like right there in the middle. They share a
Oh, yeah.
border. They're
On the board, yeah.
So they got to hold on to that neutrality.
Yeah.
And it's very sad right now.
Yeah.
It's very sad. And it's so sad how
God can
quickly,
use this moment
big
in the
time.
life of
Big time.
so many to convert them to
I
the
agree.
gospel.
Big
Yeah,
time.
that's my hope.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time. Hey, man, thanks.
Buddy, I love you.
Thanks.
for
I love
letting
you
me
too, man.
just ramble on.
Oh, gosh. We're going to
Felt
throw a
at
lot
home.
in the show notes. Like, so those H's, we're going to
Yeah.
put those in the show notes, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Hopefully you subscribe to the podcast. If you're not, that's okay. I don't care. But hopefully you will. And until we meet again, wander well and shine like stars.